Welcome, everyone, to the Nerd Journey Podcast, episode number 70. We're joining you every week to talk IT career progression and bring you the advice we wish we'd been given earlier in our careers. I'm your host, John White, at VJourneyman on Twitter, joined by my co-host, Nick Cordy, at NetworkNerd_. Hey, Nick, how's it going?
Hey, John, doing lovely. We are both pre-sales technical engineers with backgrounds in IT operations. We hope our career discussions will be vendor neutral, relevant across disciplines, and remain timeless. If you're enjoying our content, please drop us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you subscribe. And if you want to get in touch with us, tweet or DM at Nerd Journey. Ultimately, we're just two nerds on a journey.
A journey to virtual enlightenment.
So let's take a trip.
Awesome, Nick. Great take on that. Hey, last week we talked about COVID-19 and its effects on us. We mainly focused on working from home. This week we were going to address some secondary effects, mostly on the psychology of working in a situation like this. During times of uncertainty, it's so easy to get frozen in fear. So we wanted to talk about actions that we can take to combat that fear.
Just to clarify, when you say frozen in fear, John, what exactly are we talking about? Is this I just watched a horror movie and I'm frozen in fear and don't want someone to come out of the TV at me? Is this I'm frozen in fear and afraid to invest in anything? What exactly is it?
Well, for whatever reason, people associate times of uncertainty with, a time of like retrenchment and like burrowing in and nesting and protecting what they have. We don't know exactly what this virus's effects are going to be on the economy, on our jobs, on our health. And so during, times like that, it's really easy to find that fear overwhelming and then stop working on ourselves and on what we're doing to actually ensure our future, right? There's things that we can do to take control, and there's things that we can spend our time thinking about that we don't actually have any control about. It's too easy to think about those things that we don't have control about and miss doing the things that we actually do have control about. So does that clarify that?
Absolutely. I'd say step one, wash your hands.
That's right. Apparently, the key to this is wash your hands and don't touch your face, right?
For sure.
Okay.
What else is there? Like, did we have more? Should we just end it there?
No, is that it? Okay. No. Oh, all right. Yeah. So we do actually have some action items, right? Mainly, the broad overview. We're going to talk about the control that you can take over your own job. So do your job well, right? And then what can you do to enhance your larger organization? There's things that you can actually do to help out there. And then what can you do to enhance your network? So those are kind of the three increasing steps that we're going to talk about. You actually have control and actually have actions that you can take to do those things. And they will, like in the medium to long term, help you preserve what you have. And they're actual constructive things that you can do as opposed to like fear-based things. So we're not really covering like, what you can do to, prevent, getting sick or anything like that. That's, there's a whole other set of experts to talk about those kinds of things. But, we're here to focus on your career progress and your current job. So let's get into it. So first, do your job well, right? It's kind of maybe a real basic sounding thing. But again, when we are in periods of uncertainty, a lot of times we'll get focused on like a meta narrative, like how's the country going to do? How is my company going to do? Faced in these uncertain times, and we start to lose track of like what we actually need to do on a day-to-day basis. So, I think this point is really focusing on, what can you do to keep doing your job effectively? Are you even being effective at your job? So maybe, actions that you can do, do a 360 degree review, a 360 review it doesn't have to be an official one. If your organization does this in an official capacity, then maybe you can participate that there. If it doesn't, then maybe you can do like an unofficial version. Ask for an assessment from not just your manager but your peers too. If there's some downstream customers that you deal with, whether outside the organization customers or inside the organization customers, get some feedback on how you're doing, how you're serving their needs, and really incorporate that feedback into actions that you can take to improve how it is that you are doing your job. Interfacing with other working groups, that's another place. A lot of times we participate as individual contributors to cross-functional groups. So, a group to not skip is those people that you are dealing with in those kinds of um, cross-functional groups. I think it always helps to figure out metrics to measure your success. Um, I just went through my first Google performance cycle. So one of the things that kind of got underlined for me was to actually measure and have metrics for impact. Right? I did this. Um, had this idea. I took this action. Here was the impact on the organization. So um, those are the kinds of things that if you even if you're not showing it to anybody, you can at least show it to yourself, and then you have a better idea of where it is that you stand, right? Without somebody else telling you, "Hey, here's here's your ultimate metric for success." You have like more of an internal one, and feedback from other people, not just your manager.
Would you say that the metrics should be co-developed with you and your manager, John? Or in your case, was it something that you came up with yourself and just got approved by someone?
In my case, there were organizational metrics. So the organization had metrics for success for people in my role. So it was really easy to pick those. But that's between you and your manager and your organization. I've worked in organizations where there was no clear metrics for success. Being a pre-sales engineer, at least some of the metrics are how you're participating in making sales, right? But again, like you and I both know, and we've talked about this before, that's something which is almost out of your control, right? It's like a secondary effect of all the work that you do. So doing the work that tips the scale in your favor, whether or not somebody who you don't have any control over makes a decision that you can influence maybe, and you can put your best foot forward, but that doesn't mean that they're always going to vote in your favor. So it's just what have I done to tip all the scales in our favor? And if you are very, very effective at putting your finger on the scale for every single, interaction that you have, then you're being more effective. And over time, like statistically, that'll show up. Right.
Yeah, that's great. One other thing I thought of here, John, is if you're getting into the fear mindset, if you have a recent copy of a review that was good feedback from your manager or someone else, go
Mm-hmm.
read it. Go
Yeah,
remind yourself that you were chosen to do this job for a reason, and someone has given you good feedback in the past, and of course make sure that's still the case, but kind of a little reminder.
absolutely. Absolutely. So you had this idea of commitment and accountability being part of doing your job well, right? What did you mean by that?
So am I someone who does what he says he's going to do? In my opinion, when people say they're going to do something but they don't reciprocate on that and do it, once that happens a few times, you just kind of don't really believe what they say anymore, and it damages your opinion of that person, damages their professional reputation. So if I've committed to do something, hey, I'm going to have this completed by this date, and I continually miss the date without any acknowledgement of, hey, this is going to have to push back,
Hmm.
then that eventually makes me unreliable. Oh, Nick's not going to be able to get it done when he says he's going to.
Right, right. I really like how you talked about a delivery date too, right? Um, it's interesting the the definition of like going into a meeting and taking an action item away from the meeting. It's like who's accountable for it, and then what's the timeline that they're going to deliver it on. And that might be again obvious on its surface, but I've gone through, definitely, lots of meetings in my career where we walked away and we say, okay, we're going to do this, and kind of, here's maybe who's going to do it, and maybe the timeline is around, and it becomes very, very wishy-washy. We'll get back to you on this point. Okay, who's going to get back to me, and by when? I'm going to get an update when, and then maybe have a firm answer by when. So yeah, even just portraying that can be, kind of a marker, right?
Yeah. And you give them no basis with which to evaluate your credibility in that case. That, they said they'd get back to me, but they didn't say when. So if they get back to me in a month from now, does that credibility damaging? I don't know. I guess it depends on how fast I wanted it and whether I communicated that, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Because sometimes that's valid, right? It's like I said I was going to do it by the end of the week. By Thursday, I realized that that's not going to be possible. I reach out and I say, it's not going to be possible. I apologize. Here's the circumstances. Here's the revised deadline. And then if it gets delayed again, I communicate that revised deadline and I explain why. And, just apologize as much as you can, and be very, very clear, right? And then, maybe the second time the delay comes, you say, now I've lost faith in our ability to give you a firm timeline, and I apologize for that. Right.
Sure.
And I'm trying to hold my, upstream people that I'm getting this information from, a little bit more accountable.
And if it's a project that you're supposed to finish and you didn't finish it on time, maybe just communicating to someone, hey, we're 80% of the way there and we ran into this roadblock. There's no way it's going to happen. Rather than just saying it's not going to happen,
Right.
is much better.
Absolutely.
I find that if the person on the other side knows that you're making progress toward what you committed to, it's so much better than I'm not going to deliver.
Right. Right. Because oftentimes those things aren't a binary, right? What I was really looking for was for you to be at like 65 to 70% done by this date, not the entire thing. Or, we've built in a little bit of wiggle room in the entire project timeline. So it's okay. Or by the way, you over delivered earlier on, and that's put us far enough ahead of schedule that, you've, through your actions have created some wiggle room. So, all those things, might be possible, and sometimes it's just not. Sometimes it's, there's, you said it, they needed it, and then you can't deliver. And that's what you're communicating. And that's never a good thing, but at least you're communicating about it and not just going silent.
Right. Notice everyone who's listening that this communication theme is very prevalent here. You need to be a good communicator with the people you work with. It can solve so many issues before you run into a big problem if you'll just communicate and communicate well.
Yeah. Very, very true.
We just have to practice that.
Okay. So we have some thoughts there about, making sure that you're doing your job well. I'm sure that, out there in the larger community, other people have other points that they'd like to point out about that. And we'd love to hear that. So if you have any comments on that, additional things that you think need to be done, please feel free to give us that feedback, send us emails, tweet at us. We'd be happy to incorporate that into follow-ups. But as a next point, um, once you've kind of decided that you're doing your job well and you're controlling those things, and you still have leftover pent up energy, maybe anxiety, and you feel the need to take action, one of the things that you can do is work to enhance your larger organization, right? So that same type of assessment, maybe you need to do it a little bit less intensely, and be careful to not step on other people's toes, to say, how are you doing as a group? How is my team doing? Right? Not just me, but the other people. Like, how are we working well together? Are there things that we can do better? What can you, as an individual contributor on that team, do to enhance the performance of the team? Do you have coworkers who are, a little bit more overwhelmed, that you can pitch in, or can you provide them emotional support and say, hey, listen to this podcast that these two to smart Alex are putting together about things that you can do, or what can I do to help you, and take some of the load off, if you're overwhelmed just with your work. So contributing to the team that way, I think, can be very, very helpful.
Yeah, I'd say one example here, not just coworkers, but also your boss. It could happen to your boss that he or she gets into an issue of feeling paralyzed with fear, and maybe there's something that you can do to help them. Hey, how can I help you succeed? It seemed like you were a little concerned, fearful, anxious. What is it that I could be doing in addition to what I'm doing now that will help you succeed? Because whether you want to believe it or not, if you don't perform, that affects your boss's performance every single time.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. In addition to that, like, let's say you have time and energy left over, right? um, Assess that next level up organization, right? So if you're on a team, you've done what you could to help yourself, um, reached out to the other team members. They seem to be doing okay. Like, what can you maybe do to affect, like, not just your manager's team, but maybe, your manager's manager, if that's a director or senior manager, whatever that title happens to be. Um, is there something there that can be done? Or even, one level up above that, or, maybe you're part of an organization of people all with the same title, right? So when I was at VMware, I had the solution engineer title. There's a Western solution engineers, Central, North American solution engineers. Are there any activities that are going on there that you can participate in to enhance that job and that practice as a whole? Do you have ideas that you've taken to your manager that you've implemented there, and then you've implemented at the director's level that you can take and maybe pitch at the next higher up level, or even at the national level? um, Whatever that is, a lot of times organizations will have innovation centers or centers of excellence that are doing things that they need feedback and participation from other people. So if you are looking to enhance your professional reputation, you've covered your work, you've helped your team, um, you know look to step up and maybe help the organization and the practice as a whole. I remember when I was at VMware, there was a group called the um, CTO ambassadors. I don't know if you're familiar with that organization, but they had like an interface with the various offices of the CTO, the chief technical officers of the various business units, and you could apply to become an ambassador and act as an interface between those engineering organizations, CTO organizations, and the rest of the kind of field, right? Um, so, there's something along those lines. I actually haven't been at Google long enough to figure out what those kinds of organizations might exist, but look around. Maybe it's cross-functional. Maybe there's a group within your organization that maybe your company goes out and buys other companies as part of its growth strategy. So you, as an IT practitioner, maybe can participate on, like due diligence on some other, acquisition target, and, say, here's what, help investigate technology, um, maybe come up with an estimate on, how difficult it's going to be to integrate, systems and things like that. And again, like, give back to the organization as a whole rather than just what you're doing. So a bunch of stuff that can be done there.
I know in smaller organizations, you may have, instead of organizations, you may just have small departments.
Sure.
So if you're at a smaller company and a bigger company too, it's important to try and understand, what do the people in these other areas care about? What do they want? Hopefully you've studied that in your interaction with them, but as you work yourself up the chain, it's really about helping them get what they want. What is it that they're trying to do, and how can you help add value? I think that's what you said, but I was just trying to reframe it for the small to medium business folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Because you and I both worked in those kinds of organizations. Sometimes, you know, you have one person above you who is the interface with all the other departments, that are outside of technology. And sometimes, if you're in a small enough shop, you're the one person. So right away, when you're talking about your peers, you're talking about other departments. You have to deal with accounting and sales and operations, and so delivery excellence is already part of what it is that you're doing, but you need to like be talking to them and talking to higher ups, one level up. And then innovation, maybe that's where you're giving back. Hey, I know that we're talking about innovating, and or we're talking about doing what we're supposed to be doing better and very well, but what is it that we could be doing? What are your future needs? What, if you had blue sky, wishes and dreams, what would that look like? And then maybe take on some of those projects or evaluate them, or say, when we have enough budget, like we could take on this type of project and enhance this, and then figure out what the impact on of that kind of project would be, right?
Yep. And if you're in technology, this speaks to the idea of understanding what your company does outside your technology department bubble. Get it,
Absolutely.
get some understanding of the operational aspects of other areas. And I think that'll really help you drive some innovation, as you mentioned.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the exciting part of technology when, too often as technology practitioners, we get trapped into cost savings. This is going to be, slightly better function, but, overall it's going to be cheaper to do it this way, or it's cheaper to do it, this other way, or even cheaper to do it this, third or fourth way. A lot of times delivering value to the organization isn't about saving money, because the maximum amount of money that you can save is your departmental budget, right? But if you can enhance like the overall business by like, delivering something that's maybe costs more money, but then, the value and sales or, profits to the organization are higher than the cost by, an order of magnitude, then that's better than saving money, right? In the long term. So, you know, think about that. Think about what you can do to add value to your organization there. And if you do that enough, and you do that in partnership, not going rogue, in partnership with other people to say, what do we need to do to investigate this as a group? Can we put together a team to, investigate whether it's possible and worthwhile? Um, and you do it in coordination with your leadership, then, now that's part of your professional reputation as somebody who's looking out for the organization as a whole, not just your department and saving money or even just delivering well, right? It's partnering with other parts of the organization and enhancing what they can do. So always a good
DevOps, DevOps, DevOps.
thing. All right. Yeah. Is that the magic bullet for everything?
Of course.
All right. So again, we'd love your feedback if you have other ideas on enhancing your larger organization that you're participating in. Those are our ideas, and we'd love to hear your feedback if you've done this successfully, um, done it unsuccessfully. The stumbles that you've had. We'd love to hear about those things. So again, feel free to tweet at us, and we'd love to engage in a conversation about that. Finally, our final point is reaching out to your extended network and seeing what you can do to enhance that network. Um, Obviously, we're talking about first like handling your own, job tasks, and then expanding out to see what you can do for your organization. Reserve a little bit of time to reach out to your extended network, your professional network, refresh your connections, see how other people are doing, and give back to that network. Right? None of us got to where we are at, completely solo. Like we always had people, giving us a hand up. Usually that's the case. It certainly is the case for me. And you know, in times of uncertainty, if you can give back to that network, I really feel like, call it karma, call it, goodwill, whatever you want to call it. I think it will benefit you in the long run. Like you're just going to feel better, and even just feeling better about giving back to your network can help you professionally, right? Just I feel good, so I'm going to feel good about doing my job as well as, helping other people. So, again, it's just, look for people, see how they're doing, refresh that connection, uh, see if there's anything you can do for them, see how they're doing just, emotionally, psychologically, again, in uncertain times. Um, and, and help who you can, how you can, again, obviously within the limits of your resources. Um, but, it always helps to give back. I firmly believe that, sometimes it can maybe feel emotionally draining, but if you have the ability to help somebody just by listening to the problems they're having, if that's what they need, they just needed somebody to listen to them and then they feel better. You can also participate in them feeling better, not just in the, like, talking about the uncertainty and fear. So um, that's almost everything that I had to say about that. Anything to add there, Nick?
So I think that the doing things for others is exactly what you said. And in addition to that, you know, just sharing information. If you wrote an article, found some helpful thing on the internet that was really valuable or really cool, send it out on social media to your professional network and say, hey, I thought this was really helpful. I hope you can too. Or even if you know somebody who works on this particular technology or may encounter this problem, send it directly to them. Hey, I saw this, thought it might be helpful to you. I hope all is well. Let me know if you need to talk or want to chat.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great. Sharing, those resources with your network is again, it's a it's something that you can do to, like, take a positive step, um, for other people as well as yourself. And again, going back to, like, just the thesis at the beginning, it's too easy during times of uncertainty to feel overwhelmed, with all the things that we can't control. So again, here's some things that you can control. Right, do your job well. See what you can do to enhance a larger organization, and then see what you can do to enhance your network. Anything else before we get out of here, Nick?
I would just say that if you're someone out there who is something John and I can do something for, whether that's talking to you on or off the air, please let us know. Tweet out to @NerdJourney.
Yeah, love to hear back from you.
Just a reminder that we want people to subscribe and give us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. We want to know if we're being helpful and are always looking for interesting questions to ponder. We're collectively on Twitter @NerdJourney.
All right, farewell, listeners. Tune in next time as the journey continues. I'm John White @VJourneyman for Nick Cordy @NetworkNerd_, signing off.
Adios.